January 11th, 2005 marks the 19th anniversary of Resident Evil 4. Ever since its debut in the 6th generation console market, arguably the best generation of consoles, Resident Evil 4 had rocked the socks off survival horror fans across the world. Shinji Mikami and the people at Capcom had made a masterpiece. Resident Evil 4 was so popular that it spanned 9 ports and re-releases that were all critically acclaimed. For a 19-year-old game, it's still quite addictive and fun to play. Even the recent remake had sold millions of copies and won multiple awards. Considering Resident Evil 4's development history, which is quite interesting, be a whole separate other video that I'd have to explain in, had 4 different versions of it, and one of them became Devil May Cry. It's fascinating to think that in 4 different universes we got a different version of this game, and one of them was a beat-em-up action shooter. There's a great YouTube video, and I'll remember to put the link down below, where someone actually explains the 4 different versions. It's really interesting. I'd give it a shot. Time flies, and the Resident Evil 4 we know and love and cherish is 19 years old, and I find that hilarious and just mind-bending and boggling. I'm pretty sure Resident Evil 4 gets some hate in the community from the Resident Evil veterans who prefer the pre-rendered backgrounds and fixed camera angles of the early entries of the horror series, which I can't complain. Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, and 0 were very fun to play and very atmospheric and scary to play too. I was actually quite scared to touch even Resident Evil 2 on a Nintendo 64 back in the day. I remember looking at the Resident Evil 3 Nemesis cover for the PS1, and one day 7-year-old me, 7 years old playing this game, went to a Blockbuster, that's how old I am, and saw Resident Evil 4 on the shelf. I decided to choose that game to rent, and surprisingly my mom, actually let me rent it. I remember vividly looking at the cool man in the front cover holding a pistol with a bunch of monsters chasing him, and I thought, damn, that guy is cool. Little did I know that guy was Leon Kennedy, one of my favorite characters in the Resident Evil franchise, and also a super fan favorite, because everyone loves Leon S. Kennedy. Who doesn't? Resident Evil 4 was highly influential in the gaming market, mainly in a survival horror genre. I can think of The Last of Us, Gears of War, Dead Space, Dark Sector, which became Warframe afterwards, The Evil Within, arguably Max Payne 3, Kane and Lynch, God of War. I'm not saying that Resident Evil 4 patented the third-person over-the-shoulder camera, but Resident Evil 4 has made shooting enemies and traversing your environment feel right. Every single weapon you come across, loot, or earn feels different, and each has its own use. Every weapon has its own weight and sound to it, and it's just so satisfying popping a Ganado's head open with a shotgun or a TMP rifle. Not a lot of video games get the companion system correct. It either comes off as very rash or annoying. Back then, games did not have a very great AI or companion system implemented very well. It'd always be janky or just outright annoying. The enemies were a very unique take on zombies as well. Instead of your traditional flesh-eating zombies, you'd fight against villagers that were infected with a hive mind parasite, if you will, called the Las Plagas. This allowed Capcom to create many unique situations and enemies as you advance towards the story. So many different variants of enemies and mini-bosses to kill. The weapon variety packed a punch as well. You had so many choices between pistols, shotguns, and sniper rifles to choose from, and you can also upgrade them as well too. What I appreciate the most about Capcom's way of going through difficulty in the game was the dynamic difficulty, and the game would give you a challenge and be slightly harder as you progress through the chapters. There's also 4 other difficulties you can choose from, which if you want to continue and replay the game and have a greater challenge, go ahead. There's also a prize in that too, the Plaga Eraser Cannon, which is one of the most strongest weapons in the game, and the Chicago Typewriter. Capcom released the game for the PlayStation 2 and the Wii. They've also included extra content. Assignment Ada, Separate Ways, Most popular, infamous game mode, Mercenaries. Having extra content that you can unlock by beating the game in harder difficulties and add on to stack on more content is like a godsend to gamers, and it's a rare thing nowadays. The actual story was a departure from the regular Resident Evil formula. Resident Evil 4 didn't really take itself too seriously. You could be running around killing ganados and witnessing horrors beyond your eyes to being chased by a boulder or a giant statue. The actual story kind of shies away from the typical Resident Evil formula and goes for a B-movie tier horror script where the characters kind of like have a little bit of self-awareness and spit out one-liners every now and then. It is Resident Evil, so there's a lot of body horror and grotesque images and set pieces that kind of get you on your toes. It has its scary moments. It has its horror elements that it's deep rooted in. It's your first time playing or your first couple playthroughs, you will be struggling to maintain your resources and to find ammo and health packs to keep alive or to keep yourself, having a last stand. It's Resident Evil to its DNA. Resident Evil 4 is Capcom's poster boy for every game ever made that blends survival horror and action very well, period. That's what makes Resident Evil 4 a great video game and a great entry in the franchise, a timeless classic, so to speak. If you, your friends or family or spouse has never played Resident Evil 4, what are you doing? Cop a copy. The copies are like $20, probably even less now. Despite its age, the game still holds up way better than any video game that came out in the last 5 or 10 years. I bet you that. Lastly, happy 19th anniversary Resident Evil 4. Leave a like and subscribe if you love this video, and leave a comment down below and share me your thoughts. Tell me your favorite moment in Resident Evil 4 or what makes this game a great entry into the Resident Evil franchise.